Hey, g'day, it's Prezzo here, back in the workshop today, and I'm working on part 2 of a video series to do with making some brass tool setting hammers. Now I'll put a card up if you want to go back and look at the first episode where I cast the brass hammer heads. And when I did that, I was keen to be able to personalise these hammer heads because these are gifts for 3 different people, doing one for myself as well. And I was able to create a monogram in the side face of the hammerhead, but I wanted to be able to do something with the handle as well. Now, if you were really creative and arty, you could get a handheld pyrography pen and you could burn something into the handle. You could also make a branding iron and you could burn something into the handle itself using like a stamp or an iron. You could create a decal and like a water slide decal and put that on. But that wouldn't be very durable. Now, I've got a laser cutter engraver, so I figured that's the best way for me to do this. These, Chinese laser cutter engravers are relatively cheap now, about $2,000. You can get a reasonable one, and they're great for doing this sort of work. However, the thing with the laser cutter engraver is that the laser itself has a fixed focal length and it likes to stay within 1 or 2 millimeters of that correct focal length. If we start to scan the laser too far above or too far below the center line of this handle, that focal length is going to increase and that leads to a blurry, fuzzy outline. So I have to confine my artwork to a very narrow band in the center of that handle. Now the way I go about this is I go to my computer and I use Corel Draw, but I will create a paper pattern and I can cut that out with a pair of scissors and put it over the top of the handle and make sure that I've got a reasonably flat surface to make this work on. I also make sure that the outline, the paper outline I've cut out here, is the correct dimensions for the width of the handle at the fat end and the narrow end, the length is correct and so on. That allows me to create a template. Now, I've done this in the past using a wooden board with a few nails to make sure that if I have to swap parts out and do multiple parts, I can be sure that I register each part accurately as I do it. And remember, I've got to do 4 different handles with 4 different sets of artwork. So that's sort of the technique that I want to use. This time I'm going to use a slightly different method, which we're going to look at today. And we'll see how that goes. Now, here's the one that I did. This one's already been completed and I've got the artwork in the correct place. It's nice and crisp on the edges, so I know it's going to work. I'll just show you a close-up of that. And the thing is, you can get good detail with this, and it's actually burnt quite deep, probably 1 millimeter deep into the wood, so there's little chance of that wearing off over time. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the rig, the setup that I'm using, and give it a whirl. Okay, this is the rig that I used to do the first handle. So this is just a piece of MDF. I put that in the laser and I ran the job just straight on that piece of MDF. That does 2 things. It allows you to get the settings right, and it also makes sure that everything ends up in the correct relative position. And you can put a blank handle over the top of that and just check to make sure that it's going to work. When I was happy with the settings that I'd used, and just bear in mind this outer profile here is a vector cut. So in this mode, the laser just simply traces out that shape. When it gets to doing this artwork here, it scans backwards and forwards and does it 1 line at a time. However, the important thing is that you can separate these 2 operations, so you can do one or the other or both consecutively. You can change the order and so on. So when I was happy with the settings and I was happy with the position of all the geometry, I just simply put my unmarked handle directly over the top of that MDF pattern. And you've got to get your head in the laser and get over the top and make sure that you've aligned everything correctly. Now, that's okay, it works. If you bump anything, if you bump this piece of MDF and shift it out of position, you're in trouble. And you've got to go through the whole process again. So I wanted something that was a little bit more repeatable. And if I was doing 100 of these, that would be really important. If I'm only doing 4, I could probably get away with this method. That would work. However, just for the fun of it, I'm going to show you the technique we're going to use today. This is a piece of hot rolled steel. It's about 1.6 millimeters thick. Nice and heavy, which is a good thing, because once it goes in the laser we don't want it to move accidentally. And I want to be able to do that same process. I want to be able to vector mark the outline of the handle. It's not going to show up on that steel. You could just paint it with some white enamel paint and the laser will burn through that and expose the black steel underneath. Another option is just to use some masking tape. So we're going to use some of this wide tape. And we're going to position this so that when we do the vector marking, it will cut through the tape. Okay, that's plenty. And the reason why I'm using steel rather than aluminium is I want to be able to use some magnets to position my handle. So when we've done the vector marking, we can put the blank handle in the machine and we can use these magnets as registration pins to make sure we can swap out each handle accurately. The position of the laser head at the moment is the correct top left hand corner of the design that we're going to vector cut into the tape. So what we need to do now is focus the laser onto the surface of the tape. We'll do the vector cut to give us the correct outline for the handle, stick our magnets on, get our handle in position, and then we'll run the actual etching for the next handle. Now when I turn this on, you won't hear a lot, it's a bit noisy, so just watch along as we get it all focused and ready to go. This is my height gauge. Okay, so our focal height is correct now. It's around about 8 millimeters. The little gauge there, allows you to get that pretty accurate. Right, just to make sure I haven't screwed anything up, we're going to run a thing called a run box. This will just trace out the extreme outline of the profile we're going to vector cut. So here we go. Okay, so that gives you an idea of where it's going to cut into the tape. Just close the lid, get that burnt. So as long as we put each handle down over the top of that vector, we'll get it in the correct relative position and the registration will be correct. So I'm going to give me some height to work with now by changing the focal height. Alright, it's giving me plenty of room to position everything now. We'll get the magnets on there and we'll do the first one. See there, I got a little bit of movement at that end, so it's going to move that magnet in a bit. And that's all pretty good. Now it rolls a bit, so we just got to be careful that we leave it relatively level on top. This is the software I'm using for my laser cutter. It's called LaserCAD version 7.92. There's a newer one out, but this one works fine for me. If I zoom out a bit, you can see the red outline there is what we just cut into the masking tape on the piece of steel sheet. The black text at this end, or the black design, is what we're going to be etching into the wood. Now with LaserCAD you can turn off layers or turn on layers. In this case I've actually turned off the red layer and it's only the black layer that we're going to be exporting to the laser cutter itself. So it's going to ignore the red line, it'll just do the black part. You can do a preview or a simulation if you like, so I'll run the simulation and you see it's scanned over the top of that. That's obviously not in real time. but it just allows you to check to make sure that you're going to expect the correct thing when it happens. What I've done is I've drawn all 4 of these designs in CorelDRAW. I export each one as a DXF file. Each page has the same design in the same place. So when the DXF files come into LaserCAD, they're not going to shift relative to the origin of the laser. That's really important. If you get that wrong, you're going to be in trouble. So there's the same design in CorelDRAW, and I've got a number of pages here with each design. So there's mine, and if I switch backwards and forwards between the pages, you can see that the red outline of the handle doesn't move. So then you just export your DXF files and they'll come into LaserCAD without any problem. So to download that, click the download button, give it a name. In this case I'm just calling it Rick because that's his hammer. We download the document, but I have to turn the laser on so that it'll access the memory, and we've got to focus the machine before we go any further. So let's do that. So we're just jogging the laser head into position, and then we're going to set our focal height. That's correct, but I'm going to come up about another 2 millimeters so that we're averaging out the height of the material from the laser focal point. We'll just come up a little bit more. So it'll be slightly out of focal height at the center. It'll be slightly out at the edges, but average is about right. Okay, that's all good. So we're just going to run the job. I'll have to do this with a lid shut. Okay, I just downloaded the file. We'll go from there. Alright, I'm happy with that result. There's almost no sign on this curved edge that the focal distance wasn't correct. It's still perfectly crisp and readable. What I'll do now is I'll give this a light rub over with some steel wool just to remove any residue from the charring of the wood, and then we'll give that a coat of wax. But that is good. I'm happy with that. And what we can do now is we can swap out our other 2 handles. They'll go back in the same relative position, and we can be sure that we get a repeatable result even though we're using different artwork. I've just disabled the switch on the lid of my machine so you get a better look at what's going on here. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe. Alright, again, that's nice and crisp. That's how I want it. This one's for my son who lives in New Zealand. He's now an advanced manufacturing technologist, so I'm sure he'll find a use for a brass hammer. I don't know if you can see that, but you get a sort of like a resin that comes out of the wood. It makes sort of a shiny patch around the outline where it's been burnt. And I sort of want to get that off before we put any finish on the handle itself. So I'm just going to use steel wool and just give that a scrub, and then we'll put some wax in that. So that one's been done now. It's got rid of that waxy residue on the surface. If the engraved area fills up with a bit of sawdust, doesn't matter. When the wax goes in there, it sort of pushes that out. You can blow it out with compressed air if you're really worried about it. This is what I'm using as a finish. It's carnauba wax and orange oil. It's got a nice smell. I mean, it's a hammer handle. It's not going to be pristine forever, but this at least keeps it looking good while you're presenting it to someone. I'll probably give these a couple of coats just to allow that orange oil and the wax to penetrate into the wood a bit. But as you can see, it's come up nice and crisp. There's that one done. Alright, so there's 3 of them. I won't show you the 4th one, it's meant to be a surprise. But there you go. Personalised hammer handles. I've got a bit of time left in this video, so I thought I'd show you this technique here for laser etching. This is a 5th handle that I had, and I decided to make an extra hammer for a friend of mine after I started this video project. And his name's Peter McGrath. And in this example here, what I've done is I've laser etched the timber, and then I backfilled the engraved area with an ebony wood filler, which is essentially just a black wood filler. And what this does is it gives you a really good contrast between the lettering and the hickory. That's what this handle is made of. And it also means that the surface of that is dead flush, and it stops dirt and rubbish from getting into the engraved area. So we're going to have a look at that technique, but I'm going to do it on this material here because I don't have any more handles. This is a piece of Tasmanian oak or mountain ash. The botanical name is Eucalyptus regnans. Now this is the tallest flowering tree in the world. Only the Californian redwood is taller. Common height for a mountain ash these days is around about 80 to 100 metres, that's 330 feet. But there are reports of these trees being felled in the Derwent Valley back in the 1800s, and they were allegedly 140 metres high. Thing is though, it's got very similar grain to this hickory. It's quite coarse and open, so I'm going to show you how we do this process. To make this work, we're just going to get some masking tape and just tape off the area where we're going to etch on the laser. Just burnish that down relatively hard, and we're going to etch straight through the tape, and when we put our wood putty on, that will mask off the area surrounding our text. For what it's worth, I've got a 50-watt laser tube, and that was running at 65% and 300 millimeters per second for the scan. This is the product that I'm using here. It's called Timbermate, and it's a water-based wood filler. A bit slow drying, but at least it's easy to clean up. I'm guessing it's relatively non-toxic too. So all we're going to do here is just smear this into the engraved area and then let it dry. The only important thing here is to make sure you don't disturb the edges of the tape, so don't go too over the top when you're burnishing the wood filler into the engraved area. Just be thorough, just make sure you get it all in there. Now, just for interest's sake, I'm going to put some of the wood filler on the unprotected area, and when we sand it off, we'll see what happens. And what I'm expecting is that we're going to get traces of the wood filler in the open pores of that very coarse grain, which is why we put the tape on there. Just let that dry a couple of hours, sort of tell that that's now set. So I'm just going to peel the tape off. This can be a bit tedious getting it all off. So that doesn't look too bad, but what we'll do now is give that a sand, and we'll do this one here at the same time. Okay, that looks pretty awful, but let's blow it with some compressed air and see how it looks. And that's probably as good as we'll get that. Now, you know, is it perfect? No, but you can see here that it's a lot better than just smearing the wood filler on the engraved area and hoping for the best. Probably if I hadn't sanded that at all, it would have looked a lot better. But let's hit it with some wax and see what difference that makes. Okay, well, that's not bad. It has darkened some of the open pores there, but I reckon that the definition that you get is fantastic. It really feels smooth. It's got a flat surface. You get this uniform black colour to it as well. Now, of course, it depends on the type of timber that you're working with. Some of the materials with very tight grain, very little texture, will give you almost a perfect black and white finish between the filler and the background colour of the timber. Then you get other woods like this one here that does have this very open grain, and you're always going to get some pickup of the pigment in the open pores. There's probably not much you can do about it apart from possibly sealing this first. Now, just to that end, just let me try something else. Alright, this is just ordinary shellac. So we're going to just put a couple of coats on here, try and get it to penetrate into the open pores of the wood. Okay, we'll let that dry, we'll put the tape on, do it again, and I'm going to try a different method with the filler. Well, I got that a bit close to the end there, but it doesn't matter, it's just a test piece. I'm going to try filling this with a different colour. Now, this is a wood blend called Radiata Pine. It's a fairly white coloured filler. And I've added to that this stuff. This is Racine colour wood. And you can buy this in all sorts of primary colours. So you can get it in yellow, green, blue, and they're bright primary colours. When you mix it, you get that, which is a little bit pink. I could probably add some more red to that, but just for curiosity's sake, I want to try this and see how it looks. So we're going to do the same thing, basically just smear that into the wood or into the etching. Okay, let's let that dry and see what effect we get. Sort of looks a bit pink, but hey, I like it. Let's sand it, see what happens. You can see this time there's much less, in fact there's no or none of that pink filler in the wood grain. So the shellac fills the pores. Any of that sanding dust that comes off the filler can't get a grip in the pores of the timber. So let's put some wax on that one, see how it looks. Well, there it is with the wax on, and I don't know, I can't see any of that wood grain or any of the open pores with that pink filler. Meant to be red, but I can't see any of that pink filler in the grain. With the black one, there are some of those wood pores that have got the wood, the black dust in them. So certainly the shellac does a much better job of masking off the wood pores. So I guess the lesson there is seal the wood first, especially if you're using open grain timber. Then do your etching through the masking tape, fill it with whatever wood filler you want. Doesn't matter what colour it is, as long as it's good contrast. And then tear the tape off, sand that smooth, then wax it or whatever you want. But certainly that works, but that works better. Okay, so that's just a little bit of an experiment. Well, here we are back with our original hammer handle. The technique that I used on this one is not the same as what I just showed you. I didn't bother putting shellac on there, but it didn't seem to be necessary. This one's turned out quite well. But if I was doing this on, say for example, at Mountain Ash, I would certainly add the shellac. I think it's a bit of an insurance policy. So I'm going to finish this video up here now, but on the next one we're going to finish up all of the hammers. We're going to put the wedges into the handles, finish off the tops of the handles. We're going to do some selective powder coating to get some colour into that monogram that I've cast into the side of the hammer head. So for now, it's Prezzo signing out. I'll catch you on the next video, and thanks for watching.